Welcome back to another Microsoldering Wednesday. My name is Derek, and today we're going to be taking a look at a botched repair by a tech who was just getting into soldering. They tried to replace the charging port on this iPad, and they completely messed up. Let's get into the video. This type of damage is actually fairly common. When you're just beginning, you're going to make mistakes. Let's go into the microscope, take a look at all of the damage, and see what we can do to fix it and get this iPad working again. All right, so as you can see, we've got some pretty deep grooves here, some pads that are kind of no longer straight. Let's first start by removing any of the factory solder, getting down to the bare pad. So what we'll do is add some flux here. All right, we'll get some wick and our soldering iron, and I'm gonna try to see if I can suck up all of the solder, and we'll just go around and get all of the solder off of everything, clean it up. All right, I've added some 138 solder paste to the pads to help really just remove any of it, because whatever solder was on there didn't play well. 138 mixed in will be much better, and that looks a lot better. So now it's time to clean up all of the flux. Got some isopropyl alcohol here and my Q-tip. We're gonna really go over this and make sure that we've gotten all of it. Okay, now we're down to bare board, no solder, no flux. We can see the exposed ground plane and a bunch of other stuff. We're going to have to do some interesting work here. Let's take a look at a schematic to see what we're dealing with. All right, so we've got an iPad Air 2. Looks like we've got ground, 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 ground. So these first 8, 3 on this side, 5 on this side, are all ground. And then we've got a bunch of these pads to look at. So, all right, so we can see that we've got ground, 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 and then a data line. And then down here at the bottom, we've got the first 3 are ground, ground, ground. And then there's the next one. Let's see if I can push this pad over. Ground. I'm going to take my multimeter here, and I just want to see if all of this registers as ground. It does. Okay, so what's nice is, so we hit this first data line after the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's intact. Then we've got another ground. And then we've got 2 data lines. One that's missing, and I bet you that's a ground right next to it. Let's see. Yep, so that's ground. We've got to avoid touching this and this one to that. We got ground, ground, another data line. What looks like some exposed trace down there. All right, so because all of these are connected to the ground plane, I can bridge these together on top of the flex, so I don't really have to worry about this. And everything under here is ground, these pads, but I do have to worry about this ground plane touching this data line, this ground plane touching this data line. So we're gonna have to start covering up stuff with UV mask. So let's do that. Before we go any further with like trace repairs and things like that, let's get some good old UV mask. So what I've got is a little pile of it off to the side here that I can dab into. And what I'm going to do with the tip of this razor blade is basically paint. Just grab a little bit, and we're going to paint all of the exposed traces and ground plane that we want to cover up. So, and I'm going to try to keep it relatively thin. I don't want any really high peaks, because I want the flex to sit flush when the time comes. And we're just going to go over all of these little scratches just in case. And it's okay if you go over a little bit of the pad. We can always just scrape that off after it's cured. I just want to make sure all these gaps where a little bit of the ground plane is exposed are covered. Otherwise, we're going to potentially have shorting going on. And I doubt anything would actually get out here to these guys, but I might as well just use the glob of UV mask that I have to take a few extra seconds and paint over all of the scratches in the board. I don't even know how this type of damage happens. I've made some mistakes in my past, but never this much. And I'm just going to cover up anything, even though this is all ground. I'm just going to quickly cover up anything that isn't pad. Alright, so there we've got everything kind of covered up like I want it. As far as what we need to fix is concerned, this pad right here, which has a trace right coming off of it right here. Right, we've got this trace, and then this pad we need to rebuild. This trace and this pad. This trace and this pad. All we'll need to do after curing is just gently scrape away any of the solder mask that's left on the pads. Otherwise, yeah, it's just these 3 pads that we need to fix, and then we need to make sure nothing is touching ground that isn't supposed to be. But otherwise, I think I've masked off everything that I really need to get this working. So let's go cure this under the UV light, and we'll be back in a flash. All right, so let's see. That is cured. Looks like well enough. Let's see how it reacts to scratching, if it's cured enough. Seems like it. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to scrape down some of the high points on the UV mask, and also expose any of the pads that we covered up a little bit with the mask. Alright, and let's wipe that away. Now we need to zoom down in on here and expose these traces just a little bit more without removing them there. And let's do this one as well. Okay, and then the last one right here. Alright, I'm going to carve down a little bit into the mask here and just put a little bit of a valley here. The other ones are pretty low already. When we put a trace on there, they'll be good. So now let's come in. I've got some 180 183 solder paste. We're just going to put a little bit next to each one of these pads there. Get out our iron, and we'll tin the trace on each one. And now I'm going to get out my little pad repair kit. Now these pads are substantially smaller, but not a big deal that they are that small. It's okay if they're smaller, as long as we get the connection. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Add a little bit of flux. Grab our iron again, and for the fun part, let's zoom down in there on there again. Let's get the second one in line as well. I'm just going to pull the tail around like I did on the first one. Alright, so I folded around each one of those tails of the traces, and we've also got them tacked nicely. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a teeny bit more of the solder paste. Let's get even closer on those. Alright, so we got those first 2 pads. Alright, so I'm going to come in with a Q-tip and some isopropyl, and we're going to carefully try to clean up all of the flux without leaving too many fibers behind. The little jagged parts of the jumpers we'll want to grab onto the fibers, but should still be able to clean it. Okay, flip it around and we'll do it again. Oh no, that's what I get for being too picky. Knocked one off. So let's go and rebuild that one real quick. The other 2 look great. Add a teeny bit of flux there, and then we'll come in with the iron and let's clean that off. And let's do this again. Okay, let's see if this time we can clean it without messing it up. Now we'll pull out our UV mask yet again, and hopefully for the last time. Alright, and we'll paint over the traces, and then what I'm also going to do is just try to encapsulate the new pad by putting a little bit of solder mask around it so that it doesn't want to move on me too much. And we'll just cover up all of the traces, making it look nice and pretty again, making sure we've got plenty of mask holding everything together. And then we'll take our UV light to it so we can cure it. Alright, let's see if it's fully cured, and I'm not sure. Scrape away the top coat here. Let's get that centered. Okay, let's do the same on this one. Alright, so, alright, I'm going to take a multimeter here, and we're just going to go across them real quick, and we're going to see what's what. So it looks like these first 7 or so are all ground. Let's see. Yeah, ground, 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 ground. And here I'm getting 0.71. I don't have the values that I'm supposed to be getting, but that's probably okay. 0.71, ground, 0.71, 0.71, ground, ground, 0.469, 0.469, ground, open line, and then ground, 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 ground. Okay, here we got 0.65, 0.65, 0.65, 0.65, 0.45, 0.45, 0.45, 0.45, ground, 0.46, 0.46, ground. Yep. Oh well, 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 ground. Okay, yeah, we are basically all there. So I don't have to worry about all of these ground pads being there because they are all literally just tied into the ground plane on the board. But all of the important lines are there. So let's go ahead and solder on a connector. So get this in a little bit better focus. Add some flux. Alright, we'll come in with some solder wire and we'll tin up these pads. Got to be a little gentle when you're working around the ones that you've run jumpers to. Okay, we'll get out our new charge port flex, peel off the adhesive protector, line up the guides just like so, add some flux, get out our iron, and we'll start to tack down each one of these individually. And I'm going to be putting a little bit of pressure from on top with tweezers just to ensure that we do get down all the way from the pad up through this little hole in the flex pad, and that way we can ensure a solid solder joint. I will be going back over and adding additional solder just to make sure we're solid, but what I like to do is really try to flatten out the flex so we can get it as flush as we can against the board. And then once I'm confident in the joint actually having physical contact, adding solder only reinforces it. Now there's a bunch of different techniques with dragging your iron. This one's different just because of all of the damage. I'm just going to take a little bit more precaution. Typically I would just drag the iron around with a bunch of solder and it would do the job. I want to be extra cautious though with this one. Alright, time to add some extra solder. One at a time, just adding. Alright, for now that's good. It's not perfect, but what I want to do is just go over with a multimeter and see if we can get any readings. Ground. Okay. Ground, 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 ground. 0.71. 0.71. Ground. 0.71. 0.71. Ground, ground. 0.46. 0.46. Ground. OL. Ground. Ground. Ground, 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 0.62, 0.62, 0.62, 0.63, 0.45, 0.45, 0.46, 0.46, OL, 0.46, OL, ground, OL, ground. Well, that tests fine. The ultimate test is actually going to be charging it. Make sure it actually charges. I'm just going to clean off all the flux. The solder isn't the prettiest ever, but it doesn't have to be pretty compared to what it looked like before. This is a huge difference. Let's go and test it out now. Alright, so let's see. Got a bag with some brackets here. Deal with that later. But for now, let's just see if we have a working iPad. So got the battery still isolated with a piece of plastic. Carefully go and connect up the digitizer and display. Now let's pull out the battery protector. I'm going to put back the screw. Okay, we'll set that off gently. And I'm going to try to just connect up the port and it recognizes that I'm plugging it in and it's turning on. That's a good sign. Let's see if it shows charging when it comes on. And we also want the home button to be working. Hopefully this is the original one. I have no idea what else has been done with this iPad. Oh, right, we're charging. It's at 36%. We've got the charging symbol. All right, I'll put in the passcode. I'm going to change the brightness real quick. Okay, so as you can see, when we plug it in, we get charging. And I'm going to flip it around to the other side, and we get charging. So yeah, we are all good to go. Just got to put it back together. All right, so that is a quick demonstration, if you could call that quick, of how to fix the tech damage, isolate all of the pads to make sure that nothing is shorting out to ground, and put it all together and get it working again. So hopefully this has helped you learn, I guess, what not to do, which is to destroy the pads and everything around them, and also how to fix it if you do. So let me know in the comments below if there's something that you'd like to see in a future video. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and hit the like button and leave a comment down below. Thanks a ton for watching. We'll see you in the next video.